What does it mean to have an impact on something? Well, I would say that in order to impact anything, you need to present a new idea or concept to the world and observe over time if competitors and juggernauts imitate what you've presented. The best way to leave an impact on anything is to come from a place of notoriety and fame. After all, having eyes on you from the beginning will all but guarantee your idea to gain traction. In the seventh generation of consoles, when horror games lost their identity, along came Outlast. Outlast is a game developed by a small company called Red Barrels. Given that Outlast was the first game made by this little known developer, in order to revitalize the genre, it was going to have to do a lot of things right. Upon its release, this game took the internet by storm. Countless major YouTubers were uploading their playthroughs of this game, and they were garnering millions of views. What's more impressive is that the influence of Outlast on other horror games can still be felt today. A lot of people rightfully credit Resident Evil 7 and Amnesia: The Dark Descent for reviving horror games, but people seem to constantly leave this one out. Today, I'm going to explain why this shouldn't be the case. This is how Outlast changed horror games.
You want to head out and take a stroll? Go ahead, I'll wait here. Go on, run free. I'm in no hurry. No? All right. Nose to the grindstone, I like that. Okay then, right this way.
In order to understand this game's influence, we need to talk about what Outlast did first. Outlast is not a very mechanically heavy game. In spite of this game is incredibly fun and, more importantly, incredibly scary. Outlast takes place in a massive insane asylum in Colorado. You play as Miles Upshur, a journalist investigating this asylum after obtaining information from a whistleblower regarding the horrendous acts taking place there. I have to say, the art direction in this asylum is absolutely brilliant and adds so much to the fear and tension. Gameplay-wise, this game doesn't feature any combat of any kind. This really complicates things when you encounter one of the many iconic hunters while making your escape. If you're being hunted by any psycho, your only options are to run and/or hide. While I always thought that this gameplay style was inferior to horror games that feature combat, I really enjoy how it's done here. What this game lacks in mechanics, it more than makes up for in its depth. Though all you can do is run and hide, the decision the player has to make between whether to make a mad dash to the exit or hide under a bed to lose the attention of your hunter is where this depth comes from. If you run, you better know where you're going because this game is filled with dead-end hallways. If an enemy chases you down one of these dead ends, you're finished. Hiding, on the other hand, will prevent stalkers from finding you, but you can't stay there forever. You need to make sure you exit your hiding space at the perfect time. Otherwise, you'll just end up getting chased again. What ties all of this together is the level design. There are some absolutely brilliantly designed objectives and levels in this game. In most levels, the player is thrust into situations where they need to activate 2 or 3 pumps or generators while being hunted by a psycho. These sections never get old and they are by far the highlight of the game. The areas you need to sneak around to activate all these devices are intelligently filled with hiding places, narrow hallways, and dead ends that really makes you feel helpless while some freak angrily hunts you down. Finally, Outlast introduces a really unique mechanic with the camcorder that you use throughout the game. This game features several dark areas that you can't see ordinarily, so you have to use the night vision feature on this camcorder to navigate these areas. This night vision mode has a finite battery life, so you'll have to keep a stockpile of batteries on you in order to see. While batteries aren't too scarce, and I never really had any close calls with them, the real challenge comes with reloading a battery. In order to reload, you have to go blind for a few seconds to do so. If you're being chased in a dark hallway when you do this, you could be in a lot of trouble. Because of this, sometimes you have to make the tough decision to reload your camera prematurely, wasting a small bit of battery while in safety in order to avoid this exact situation. As previously stated, there aren't a wealth of mechanics in this linear game, but what's here is incredibly deep. Now, let's see how this depth influenced the genre as a whole.
You don't have to be scared of me. I can tell we're the same.
With the lesser amount of gameplay mechanics in this game, you may be wondering, what could developers like Capcom or Frictional Games take from Outlast? The answer to that question lies with the immortal enemies and their ability to chase you. Before Outlast, there weren't terribly many games that featured unkillable hunter enemies. Sure, the original Resident Evil 2 and 3 featured a primitive version of this, along with Amnesia: The Dark Descent, but none of them did it quite like Outlast. The main hunter in this game, Chris Walker, blows any attempted hunter villain out of the water, and his influence can be seen in following titles. Throughout the game, Walker will hunt you down and he cannot be easily avoided. He isn't stupid, he can't simply hide in a corner while he passes. If you do that, he'll catch you every single time. He's keen to every sound you make, and because of this, sometimes even hiding in a locker isn't enough to protect you. I can't stress enough how new and scary something like this was for 2013. I think the biggest things that make Walker work are his gameplay, design, and presence. Though there isn't much particularly iconic about the way he looks, he remains an easily recognizable character. You could show Walker to any horror game fan and they can at least tell you that he's one of the main enemies in Outlast. One of my favorite things about Walker is the sounds that he makes. Along with the twisted things he mutters, he makes this unmistakable, eerie chain-dragging sound when he walks, telling players that their worst fear is nearby. Walker is quickly established as your nemesis and he simply cannot be ignored. Just because you escaped him before does not mean that he won't come back for you. What other survival horror hunters fill a similar role? The biggest and most obvious similarity is possibly the most iconic survival horror stalker in the modern age, Mr. X from Resident Evil 2. His imposing presence, the loud thump of his boots, his recurring appearances, his brains, his chase sequences, all of these aspects are so similar to Chris Walker. For this reason, I will always believe that Walker had some influence on how Mr. X played. Of course, I have more examples than just that, though. Even hunters like the Monster in Amnesia: The Bunker, the Xenomorph in Alien Isolation, the Death Angels in A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead, despite having a unique gameplay mechanic, Jack Baker in RE7, and even the security robots in the Callisto Protocol all have traces of Chris Walker's DNA mixed in with their own creative liberties. I understand the argument that I'm making here is quite bold, but what I don't understand is why Outlast doesn't get more credit in the quote-unquote what saved survival horror games discussion. I feel that without Outlast and Chris Walker, this genre would not have been able to evolve the way it did. Chris walked so that this genre could run. I believe that there's one more aspect of this game that influenced the genre. This aspect comes in the form of this game's flaws and shortcomings. After all, sometimes learning what not to do is just as valuable as learning what to do. The biggest flaw of this game has to be the scripted chase sequences. On paper, this is a wonderful idea and a great way to mix up gameplay while drawing from established mechanics. In practice, it's just kinda lame. To elaborate, these segments force the player into an area with a bunch of psychos and task us to run away via one correct path. Because of this, there is little to no room for error in these segments, meaning that if you get confused for a second on what you're supposed to do, or if you simply neglect to barricade one particular door, it's game over. Once you respawn, you go back to the beginning of that chase, having to repeat the whole thing with your newly acquired knowledge. Repeating something like this is not scary or tense in the slightest, and it's not hard to see why this mechanic was not used in other games. The only example I can possibly think of is in Resident Evil Village, where you get captured and chased through a set of tunnels. This was definitely one of the least memorable parts of the whole game. The save system doesn't do this game much justice either. It's a standard autosave system that saves after each difficult segment. This is really the only save system that this game could reasonably have given its linear design. What's the point of having a save room after all when you're never going to be sprinting back to one? While this may seem totally fine on the surface, it is a little lame to get through a really difficult part and then just see the save icon automatically appear at the bottom of the screen, immediately eliminating tension. I hope the next Outlast game has a more open and interconnected world structure like most other horror games now. I feel that this game could have really benefited from that. After all, it does have a perfect setting for a Metroidvania-style horror game. Audiences seem to prefer this style anyway. I think developers understand now that horror fans like an open structure more similar to a horror sandbox than just a linear trip. We enjoy puzzles and using our brains throughout our adventures. Perhaps the next Outlast game can come full circle and take inspiration from other games that it itself had inspired. Taking into account how revolutionary the encounters with Chris Walker are, and how this game handles chase sequences, I have to wonder why people don't credit the effect this game had on the horror game genre. As someone who prefers horror games with combat, Outlast really won me over, and honestly, it gave me a much more positive view on this breed of horror. More importantly, I couldn't help but notice how familiar this game felt despite it being over 11 years old. I know that this familiarity came from its lasting impact on the genre. I really hope that this video draws attention to the impact that this game had. Finally, I'm happy to say that this game's hard work really paid off. This game sold really well. After all, we were given an Outlast 2 that I still need to play, as well as the most recent entry into the series, The Outlast Trials, which is a multiplayer horror game that seems to be a massive hit. It's so good to know that this series is doing well and that new Outlast games are likely on their way. We can only hope that these potential new Outlast games take some notes and inspiration from what the horror genre has done recently. So the next time you play a horror game, and you're being chased by an immortal hunter, take a moment to think about this game, Chris Walker, and the influence that it's had on your gaming experience.